At 5 o'clock, we told you about a California company with an interesting, a bit controversial idea. The company, Reflect Orbital, its plan to send tens of thousands of mirror-equipped satellites into space. The satellites would reflect sunlight back to Earth for use at night. Storm team meteorologists Carson, Metcalf, and John DiPasquale sat down with SUNY Oswego and SUNY Oswego physics and astronomy professor. He's impressive. He's got a lot of titles. They sat down this week to discuss the plan, the pros and the cons.
It sounds like a fascinating idea, but when you really kind of peel back the layers here and look at this, I mean, could you speak to, you know, this is one, just want to be clear, this is one test, one satellite that's going to go up. The company eventually would like to put up 50,000 satellites by 2035.
Yeah.
Speak to, if you could, just baseline impacts. I mean, pros versus cons. What does this do for us, you know, in terms of impact?
So the first thing I'd say, it's not a new idea. It was actually postulated back in 1923, so almost 100 years ago. The idea of putting sort of mirrors in space and reflecting that sunlight. Obviously, the need for energy is very important. Need for sustainable, clean energy is important. So from that respect, anything to do with solar power, I think, deserves further consideration. The initial sort of estimates which I've looked through suggest that the initial mirror will generate about 0.04 watts per meter squared, and sort of the brightness that you get will be roughly what you see on a full moon. So you do really need a lot of satellites in order for this to make a substantial contribution to energy generation. So you need something of the order of tens of thousands of satellites in order to get up to something like 200 watts per meter squared.
Wow. Which would be, what equivalent would that be if you had the 50,000 that they're projecting to try to put up into
so if you had about 50,000 satellites up there, similar to the one that's supposed to be going up, that would be about 200 watts per meter squared. So that could be, you know, heat a few thousand homes, and perhaps, you know, tens of thousands of homes, perhaps.
What kind of light would that cast?
So one of these satellites, that would, like 0.04 watts per meter squared is sort of like the light of the full moon, if you can think of that. So 200 will be a lot more than that. That would be for energy generation. That's not necessarily saying that those beams will be lighting up. They'll be lighting up solar panels on the Earth, put in specific locations, and the output that you get will be about 200 watts per meter squared. So 200 watts per meter squared, that's about like 15 to 20% of the noonday sun.
Wow,
so
that's quite a bit.
Yeah,
that's quite a bit.
In certain areas, you'd see that, not everywhere, but that's roughly what you'd see.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
That's assuming everything goes according to plan. Remember, this is just the first test satellite, and you know there are lots of cons to this as well.
Yeah, and Dr. Kanbur, let's put a scale on that, right? Yeah. Because right now we've got roughly 18,000 active satellites. So we're talking about adding to that 50,000, tripling, right? Effectively. I mean, talk about. Let's set the impacts, pros and cons aside for a minute. Let's just talk about the sheer number of satellites. I mean, obviously space is space. We're talking low orbit, right? I mean, what are we going to run out of space? Are we going to be worried about collisions, things like that?
Space junk crashing to Earth.
Well, already, you know, space junk and so on is a bit needs to be monitored very carefully when you send a new satellite into space, or when you send when NASA sends a space mission. So if you triple that number, obviously it's going to make it much, much harder to coordinate effectively the movements of all of these satellites, and even the mirrors. So even the mirrors of these satellites, they're going to, at the altitude that they're planned, they'll suffer quite a few collisions from, you know, millimeter, centimeter size objects, space debris, and that can also degrade the efficiency of the mirrors and so on. So it's definitely a technically very challenging project, and I'm not so sure at the moment whether the benefits will be significant enough to warrant such an effort. And then there's also the sociological aspects of this. We as a species have grown up with the night, 24-hour day, night, day cycle. Plants, animals are really accustomed to that cycle. And I think not enough is known about what would happen sociologically and biologically if we disturb that cycle.
To watch the entire conversation with John and Carson, make sure to tune in to Metcalf and DiPasquale, 8:30 tonight, exclusively on WSYR Plus.
Download the WSYR Plus app on your TV to stream News Channel 9 for free. Just go to your smart TV, search WSYR Plus in the App Store, and download to start streaming today.